What's up, guys? Welcome back to the YouTube channel. I just got over here to the shop. We're going to mess with the engine a little bit more today. Very simple today. I've got a very easy goal that hopefully it's not going to take me 6 hours like it took me last time to get the oil pan on. Today, what I'm going to do is just get the heads on. I've already got the studs in the motor, so I need to clean the heads, just get them nice and clean the head gaskets. I am going to reuse my head gaskets. I use copper head gaskets. They're Clark's. They're 60 thousandths thick, and you can reuse a copper head gasket several times as long as it's in good shape, as long as you have not blown a gasket, and as long as you are careful when you clean it, which I'm going to do all that. I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So we're going to just get the heads torqued on. I'm going to show you my heads, and it's very basic. The amount of power that this thing makes, this destroked 400, I mean, is essentially what it is. It's a 4.165 bore. It's got a 3.34 stroke crankshaft, and it's got a long rod, 6200. And the piston is actually an off-the-shelf piston. It's a CP bullet piston, and it's actually manufactured for a 3.75 stroke, so it's just an off-the-shelf part number I've shown you all before. This motor makes a lot of power for what it is, and it takes a lot of boost to do it. In the no prep world, it's perfect because my torque, I can leave on 0 or 1 or 2 or 5 pounds of boost, or if we're on a sticky track, I can leave on 12 or 15 pounds of boost if I wanted to, and it'll go. And so that's the good thing about this no prep. Now I know there's a bunch of no prep cars that are out there with big motors, and they're running really good, really strong, and actually probably some of the front runners are big blocks. But I love being able to just turn it down and then let the boost do its thing and roll down track. 1800 horsepower is what this thing makes on 40 pounds of boost. And I mean, that's a lot of power. That's a lot of power. But looking at the pistons, looking at the way everything worked out other than the catwalk, the piston side skirt wear is really good. All right, guys, check it out. Don't forget to go to turbojohnracing.com, grab you some t-shirts, and grab that flip coin. So the bottom end is together. So hopefully tonight, the short block, we will have an official long block. And we'll go ahead and put my lifters in it as well. I can get them in and out with the heads on, but it is a lot easier to get them in and out with the heads off. Here is my heads. These are Profiler 23-degree heads, and there's the actual part number. These things are great. I've had these for a little while now. We do run water in the heads only. Just use a 1206 intake gasket. Something I wanted to show y'all. I always just glue the intake gasket to the head, but I think I'm gonna stop doing that. I think I'm gonna start gluing it everywhere. Look at the deformation in this gasket up here. And this thing is, I mean, it's making some boost. I mean, I make 40 pounds of boost down track when we're at a reasonably prepped track. So, I mean, it's making some power. 40 pounds of boost is sliding that over. Now, one of the things that I do as well to try to kind of mitigate this a little bit is because I've had this actually blow out before. And, it's stuck pretty well. And I probably could honestly reuse this again, but I'm going to go ahead and pull it off, and we're going to change them. And they're glued down, but let me show you what I do under. Apparently they're really glued down. I take a punch. God, I'm gonna have to clean it first. You can see a couple of them, but I take a punch and I go around the ports, and I may go around them and do a few more, and it just kind of raises it up a little bit to get it so that it will bite into the gasket a little bit more. I think I am. I'm gonna take the punch when I get this cleaned off, and I'm gonna go ahead and go around it a little bit more, just so that we can try to get a little bit more bite. And I use the red gasket shellac. High tack is what they call it. Put a little bit on it, on the gasket, a little bit on the head, and stick it on there. And you can see how good this stuff sticks on. It does much better than the silicone. But I think what I'm gonna start doing is using the same thing, the high tack around these ports, and then silicone on the water ports, but so that it'll just hold it in place just a little bit better, and just understand that the reason you just glue it straight to the head is so that if you're at the track, if you need to pull the intake off for any reason, it's just easier to pull the intake off, and you don't have to replace that gasket every single time. But let's clean this up real fast. I'm gonna clean this surface up. The actual deck themselves is pretty good too, but what I like to do is take some carburetor cleaner and some Scotch-Brite pad and just gently rub it. Don't ever hit this thing with a Ziz wheel. And you can see where my razor blade got it scratched up a little bit. Those Ziz wheels on the air grinders, man, they will tear up a surface, a block, and a head. So always do it by hand. Don't ever do it with I know it's faster with the air, but man, it just really tears it up. These are 208 valves, 160. What you're looking at, just making sure these springs are not very old. I'm just looking to make sure there are no broken springs, making sure none of the inner ones are broken. The other thing to look at is these heads, they're at different offsets, the intake and exhaust, which that's the way they come from the factory. And that is perfectly fine, but making sure none of this has changed. You know, looking at the locks, making sure they all look fine, looking for any abnormal like wear on the top of the valves. All that looks good. These heads have got a D port for the exhaust, and these things are box stock. I mean, they work well, man. I'm very, very happy with the way the heads work. This probably will not be my last set of profilers. The other two sets of heads I had when I was running no water in the heads, on the middle exhaust valves, right down here, all the way down, they cracked, and the heads were ruined because I think it was just due because there was no water. I heard a couple engine builders say one time, I think they're exactly right, that if the head is designed to have water in it, it needs to have water in it. If it's a solid head, then obviously you're fine. I'll clean them up real fast. You see, I had to do a lot of clearancing to get my push rods to go through there. I run 3/8 push rods instead of 5/16. Lots of grinding. That was a pain in the butt. Also, my lifters are offset, so the offsets on the lifters make it a little better, but you still have to do a lot of grinding. All right, guys, well, these things are sufficiently clean. And you see I just used that little Scotch brake pad, gently rubbing it over and over and over with a little bit of brake clean, and it does do okay. And you can see this gasket, this is just the way I have to do mine. The O-rings do not completely touch. You have to do kind of a figure 8 pattern. You are noticing now, I talked about it before, water only in the head. Basically, you can see there's no spots for water to go through the heads down to the block. It goes through the head and circulates, but it does not go into the block all the way. And so, you know, that's one of the things that makes a huge difference with, you know, keeping the heads alive, in my opinion. I wish I had time and effort, and I never seem to, but I wish I had the time to actually weld all the water ports on the bottom of the head. I mean, technically, this is still a wet head gasket. It's not dry. The problem with a wet head gasket, if water's going through it, or in my case, if water is here, if I blow this gasket, it's going to blow water all over the place, and it's going to possibly crash me. And so they dry deck them. What they do is they put water in the block and heads, they put a solid gasket on it, but then they weld up the heads so the water cannot circulate. And so what I have to do is I've got this labeled driver side and passenger side, so I know which one is which. And so essentially, I just come through here and I just drop it down. Now, something I do as well is this is the oil drain back here. So I put a little bit of silicone on the oil drain back, and then that is it for on this side of the head. And, you know, I've heard of people flipping the head gaskets, but I just don't know that that's a good idea. I just always put it back exactly like it was. And, you know, copper is soft, so it is going to, it's going to go back on the O-ring where it was. If it's slightly off, the copper should flex enough to make it so that it still is okay. So there goes your copper head gasket install. So before I get too far along and I forget, I'm gonna go ahead and grab the lifters and stick the lifters in. Okay, guys, well, the head gaskets are on and ready to go. Got a little bit of silicone on here. The reason I always put a little bit of silicone on the tops is because some head gaskets, and from what I remember, it's like the Felpro MLSs, they don't quite go to the top of the block. And so sometimes you'll get an issue with a little gap there between the head and the intake, and it'll be a leak. So these go all the way to the top, but not a big deal. I always put a little bit of gasket sealer there anyway, a little bit around the oil drain. And then what I'll do, just go on the head and go around the water ports very lightly, around all the water ports. And now, once that seals up, water will be in the head only. So I did get the lifters in. I number my lifters, see if you can see it. See that number 2, not the big number 2, but the one I scribed in there. Number 4, just making sure that they go back on the exact same cam load. The other things I was telling you a minute ago, my lifters on the intake side are offset, and so they're moved over 180,000 away from the intake port. So just allows the thicker push rods more room for clearance. So that's always a good thing. The other thing I have to do, and this is a small block Ford issue sometimes as well, you can see the little teeny scratch from the oil galley down, or the oil port to the galley. And the reason I do that is so that you get enough oil going to the top of the motor. Sometimes it works fine, and sometimes it does not. So I just automatically do it as soon as I get the lifters. And I usually just do it with a little Dremel or die grinder, and then that way you make sure you got plenty of oil flow to the top of the motor. All right, let's snap the heads on it real fast. Okay, so here we go. This is how I do the silicone, very light layer, very light coat. I missed that one. That's actually the oil drain back up there. So let's just get a little bit. It takes very, very little to go around it, and then you're just basically just, I mean, this stuff will expand out when you torque down the heads, and now it will seal if all goes well. So, and you can see this head's been repaired. I don't know if I showed y'all that one or not. This is one of the ones we broke a piston. It's got a little porosity here, but all of this was completely beat out. So we had to fix it, rebuild the chamber. It was a mess, but it is working. All right, let's put the head on. Oh boy, we're getting closer. So the heads are on it. I just pulled a sloppy mechanics head install. Well, I'm not quite done yet. I always just snug the bolts down, just let it bang a couple times, real light. Probably get some 20, 30 foot-pounds. My next step, I do it in sequence. So that is one of the things. Basically, you start in the middle here. There's 17 head bolts in a small block Chevrolet. So you go here, 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 here. Your circle just goes out and then gets bigger and wider as you go until you get all of them. And then you're done. I usually do a 2-step process. I am going to take these down to 80 foot-pounds, which is 5 more than what I normally go. I normally stop at 75. But I'm going to go ahead and go to 80 today. And I'll do 50 and then 80. And then we'll do both sides. And then the heads will be on. And we'll probably be done for tonight. All right, guys. Well, we got this thing all buttoned up. The heads are on it. And these profilers are just bad to the bone. They're awesome heads. Love them. They've been beat up a little bit, but, you know, it is what it is. They work fine for what I am doing, even in the beat up state. So we are good to go. So we have an assembled long block, so I'm very happy. So next time I come over, we'll go ahead, we'll get the spark plugs out of it. Go ahead and get those done. Spark plugs out. Go ahead and get the rockers on it and get the rockers adjusted. And then go ahead, at that point, get the intake on it. And then, man, we are ready to set the motor in the car. So that might happen this weekend, possibly. It kind of depends. You know, like I said, we are going to go ahead and put it in the old car. So it won't take too long to do that. So that may be what we do. So we're getting closer, guys, getting closer. All right, guys, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. I appreciate it. Go to turbojohnracing.com. Grab you some swag. Later.